I'm going to talk for a few minutes about the process of reflection that we've been doing here at previous symposiums on this and are doing this at this symposium, as you've seen. We've had some feedback on it from people from prior sessions. And as I understand the results of the feedback, most people find it very helpful, very reflective, very empowering. Not everybody, but most people, but by far the largest majority in terms of the people who write back to us after the session is over. There's some people who say, well, yeah, it's fine. You know, I don't know that it made much difference, but that's a smaller group. And then there are, seems to be always 2 or 3 people who say, what a nonsense, I want to get on with it. And I understand that, we all do. We're all driven, we're all type A's, and we're all driven by accomplishment and getting on with things and don't have enough time and like to drive things forward. But those of you who, if there are anybody here who is of that mind, my suggestion is it's a really good time. These times of reflection are a really good time to think through your to-do list. Or your laundry, or your shopping list, or whatever useful thing you want to spend that time on. The rest of you, I'd like to say a couple of things to. One is a little bit about why we're doing it, what the science is behind it, because there is science behind it, what the experiences are behind it, and a few tips on perhaps a skillful means to use. Fortunately, I don't have a lot of time, because if I get into the science, I'm way over my head. But I want to talk about a couple of things. These are a few thoughts from a book, a wonderful book by Dan Siegel, who has been presenting at Garrison on a number of occasions, and you can see a clip of his work on the Garrison website. He has a great book called Mindsight, which he's a Harvard Medical School trained doctor, teaches at Stanford as a psychiatrist, and is using what he calls Mindsight, which is really mindfulness, in his practice, and talks a lot about the science of the brain as it's been emerging. So a few minutes on the brain. First off, a couple of points to keep in mind. One is neuroplasticity. It turns out that no matter how old we are, our brains are actually very flexible and are constantly changing and evolving. And the way we change and evolve them is by doing new things. We've got over 100 billion neurons. The more that we do a thing, the more they connect, the stronger those connections are, and we have lots of inbred habits. You know all of this because you experience that, but it's actually physical in the brain. And as we do new things, we start to move those connections around physically in our brain. And we also start to have different ways, areas of our brain that fire in different times in different ways. So we're playing around with our brain at all time. It's important to think about this too for those of us who are getting to a certain age, because it's one of the ways that we stay alert and alive and creative. Mirror neurons. We talked about that. I talked about that a little bit. We are all interconnected powerfully as part of our evolution. One of the reasons why human beings survived and became the dominant species on the planet is because we work together, not individually. Even though as Americans we believe in doing it on our own, we also as Americans believe in working together. Community, very much part of the American spirit. The individual pioneers would go out on their own, but when they got out to wherever it was, they'd get together with the other individuals and they'd build each other's barns. We're constantly looking at each other's faces. You're looking at my faces and you're getting more information from my body language, my facial expressions, the tone of my voice, than from the words. We do this all the time. So these are mirror neurons that create the empathy, literally reading the signs and then recreating inside ourselves the experience of what's going on in you. So all of this is now part of brain science. People have been running people through fMRIs and all of this stuff and watching all of this develop. One of the things that's been done a lot now in the last 10, 15 years at Harvard, University of Wisconsin, Stanford, and other places is studying the impact of the meditation practices on the brain. And among the things that Daniel Siegel talks about, particularly, is the way in which we integrate parts of the brain. You've all heard about the left brain, the right brain. Most of us are very good at the left brain or you wouldn't be here, because you're all very successful people in the world, and we live in a left brain world in this country. Linear, linguistic, logical, get the job done. That's how we're trained. Go to school, you're really working on the left brain. The right side is holistic, artistic, integrative, and intuitive. And for those of you who have an artistic bent, the architects in the room, you've developed some of that as well. But we tend not to connect the two. One of the things that turns out to be very powerful about contemplative practices and about reflective times is we begin to integrate not just the left and the right hemispheres of our brain, but also huge masses of neurons we have around the heart and around the gut. These are not things that just run the heart and keep it beating properly and help our digestion, which are all working very well right now, I hope, for you. But are actually places where there is intuitive action going on. When you say, I have a gut feeling, it's very likely because there was a set of instincts, of thoughts that came out of that neuronal mass that got fed up into your brain. And likewise, when you have a heartfelt feeling, it comes out of that area around the heart frequently. Now, this practice, as Daniel Siegel talks about, helps to integrate the signals coming up from your body into your right brain through various things, parts of the brain that have names that it doesn't matter what they are. I don't know what they are, and I've read about them. The point is they move up, they go into the right hemisphere, and then they make it to the left hemisphere. When we are able to integrate all of those, we have capacity that we don't normally have just on the logical side. Has anybody here had the experience of getting up in the morning, having a shower, and all of a sudden having an intuition, an answer to a problem you've been struggling with, didn't even know you were thinking about, but had an aha moment? Or at 3 o'clock in the morning, or taking a walk, or riding a bike, or running, and all of a sudden there's an aha moment. Because in those times we're integrating what's going on, and there's an opportunity for things to arise in the left conscious brain that would not otherwise have been there if we had been just thinking. Gotta figure this out. What we are doing in these moments of reflection is tuning in consciously, intentionally, allowing our brains to integrate and to be open to the other parts of our brain than just our logical linear left brain side. We're actually creating an opportunity, a space for those intuitions to arise, which is why it's very helpful afterwards to write down some notes, because things may have arisen that you might not otherwise have had the experience of. Now, I want to talk just for a few minutes more about what this practice does, because one of the things that I'm doing, I'm working with the New York Insight Meditation Society. I'm on the Teachers Council of the Insight Meditation Community of Washington, and I've been teaching meditation for some years now. Although I am a recovering lawyer, you wouldn't expect that to be what a recovering lawyer would be, but it's one of the things that I've learned, have been really drawn to. And we're working right now, teaching a class at White & Case, one of the really fine white shoe law firms, a global power of law firms, one of the best in the world. Now, we're not having the senior partners. They haven't quite caught on yet, but we're running this class. And one of the things we're beginning to educate them on is they've brought us in because this is a good way to reduce stress. Proven scientifically, control studies, all of that, stress reducer, and also control studies, reducing stress improves health. Well, that's great. Well, most of the partners in a big law firm don't really care about either stress or health amongst the associates. Get the job done. We'll pay you. If you don't like it, work somewhere else. But what we are beginning to focus on is the fact that these practices improve performance, not just for lawyers, not just for the staff, but for anybody in this room, on the job. What are the things that these kinds of practices can do specifically? One is they develop a capacity to listen. You're listening to me now, that's great, appreciate that. You probably have some thoughts going on in your mind at the same time, you're making judgments, you're evaluating, that's fine, keep doing it. But to listen deeply is a practice, is something that we can develop so that we're listening behind the words, we're listening and just being open to whatever it is that's experienced. Relationships. We tend to react to things that people tell us. Before we even think about it, we know what it is we want to say. We know how we're reacting. We know the words. What these practices do is create a space in which, while that reaction comes up, we're able to reflect on it and create a response, not a reaction, that can be far more to the point effective. So working with clients, tenants, employees, bosses, customers, however you want to do it, in the job, on the job, becomes far more effective and impactful. The ability to be calm in the midst of a stressful situation. Now, you all may not have too many stressful situations. Life is going along fine. You're all very successful. But for those of you who do from time to time have a stressful moment, somebody calls up, the bank calls up and tells you they've just, you're about to start construction and they've decided that, yes, we approved it, but actually we're not going to give you the money. Something came up. Or whatever. You can imagine the situations. You've all got them. How do you respond? You all obviously respond effectively because you wouldn't be here because you're very successful. But the ability to drop into a focused, calm, to be able to respond and to be able to create that calm with your coworkers, your bosses, your employees, with other people. It's very powerful. And the ability to enhance that capacity that you already have is one of the things that grows out of this practice. The ability to choose amongst competing demands. Frequently you're asked to multitask, do 12 different things at once. They're all terribly important. How do you choose? How do you focus on just the thing to be done? You choose one thing, focus on it. Then you choose another thing, rather than thinking half the time, wait a minute, I should be doing this, or should I be doing this, or should I be doing this? Juggling. No, focus on one thing at a time. And the ability to be really patient and choose thoughtfully as things come up. Now, there are other kinds of qualities that develop out of this practice. I just wanted to touch on some of those to say that this is a practice that's very, very valuable in the workplace. We're using it in a slightly different way here. We're using it as a way to access intentionally a deeper wisdom that is available in each and every one of us, that we have access to from time to time in each and every one of us. But this way allows us the opportunity to begin to develop a conscious way of accessing it. And we hope that will be helpful to you as we go through the day, as the next few days. It has been for many people. I would suggest, just as a matter of skillful means, if you're willing to try this, you don't have to, during those 5-minute periods of reflection, find a place for your mind to focus. In the practice, it's known as an anchor. One of the classic anchors is the breath. If you choose to do this, find the breath, a place where it's easy to follow the breath, your nostrils, your throat, your chest, your abdomen, or the flow of air in and out. Actually, if you're looking for an anchor, it turns out to be a very convenient one because it's very portable. And if it's not present, your issue is not about meditation. Your issue is much more fundamental. But you can choose a pain in the leg. Pain is actually a very good place to focus the mind. Or sound. Some place where you can bring the mind, because you'll find as you pay attention, the mind is constantly bouncing around. Thoughts are coming up. And you may notice you have a restless mind. So, all I'm to finish, just suggest that during that period of time, you follow the breath. Don't worry about thoughts. Thoughts may emerge, just let them go, come back to the breath. And just let whatever it is occur, just be present. If it's a restless mind, just notice, my mind's restless, come back to the breath. If your mind's calm, just notice, my mind's calm, come back to the breath. And then, when it's time to write, let the thoughts come up, follow them, pursue them. So just a couple of thoughts about a possible way of using these periods of reflection, not to do anything intentional, but just simply to be open and present. Just open in your body, present in a natural, relaxed way. Thank you.